Could I ask everybody to please take their seats? Ready to go?
Sergeant at Arms, march on the colors. Color party, mark, time! Color party, up! Color party, staff, turn!
Thank you. On behalf of the Wellington County Museum and Archives, I would like to welcome all of you to our annual Remembrance service and reading of the names of the memorial roll. I would like now for you to please, if you can, remain standing for the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
And now I'd like to call, please be seated.
Color party, order, colors!
And now I'd like to call upon Warden Kelly Linton for words of welcome from on behalf of the County of Wellington.
Color party, stand at pace!
Thank you, Kyle. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor for me to be here representing the County of Wellington with all of you here at the Wellington Place campus this week before Remembrance Day to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thanks to our county staff who have worked with the local legions to make this ceremony possible today. I'd like to recognize a few of the elected officials that we have in attendance today. County Councilors Davidson, O'Neill, Duncan, Lennox, Campbell, Anderson, Mayor-elect Dave Turton, and Mayor-elect Michael Dane. So these markers on the lawn behind me are a powerful visual reminder of the over 500 individuals from Wellington County who gave their lives in the First World War, World War II, Korea, and Afghanistan. And next week, please join us as the Remembrance Day candles will be lit at each marker as a tribute to the fallen across Wellington County. This tribute takes place at dusk on November the 10th, and the candles will remain lit until November the 12th. It's important to remember that these brave individuals gave their lives for a noble purpose, to protect the values that Canada holds sacred. Over the decades, brave Canadian soldiers have stood shoulder to shoulder with their allies against aggressors who have threatened our shared values, like equality of all people, democracy and the rule of law, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion. As we see the conflict going on in the world today, right now, we know these values need to be as important to us today as they were when these brave Canadians fought and died in years gone by. Wellington County has paid homage to 2 Victoria Cross war heroes by naming streets right here on Wellington Place campus after Frederick Campbell and Samuel Honey. This will ensure that every time we see these street signs, we will be reminded of the sacrifices that these men made and others who made them across Wellington County. Today, it is an honor for me to join all of you in remembering and honoring those soldiers who fought, those who died, and those who supported the war cause back home. Their sacrifice was not in vain. God help us to have the character and the courage of those who have gone before us that we remember today.
We would now like to begin with the reading of the names. I would like to call upon the representative from the Legion of Arthur.
Good morning. Edward Arnold, this is from the First World War. Andrew John Batal, Alfred Bond, John Henry Bowman, Stanley H. Brocklebank, William W. Burton, James J. Cantlin, Robert John Chambers, Arnold C. Cole, Alexander M. Dunbar, William Harry Fessy, Norman L. Galloway, Donald Gibson, Francis Gleason, Alexander Graham, Samuel Green, Wesley Green, Leo Patrick Griffin, Roy Haldane, Vincent J. Hansen, Ira William Hathaway, Robert E. Hewitt, Samuel L. Honey, Joseph A. Howson, Robert Mallet, Daniel Herbert McDougall, Thomas G. McTaggart, George A. Milne, Michael Riordan, Isaac Ritchie, Patrick Francis Scholes. And your Second World War, Nelson W. Bell, John A. Elliott, Charles R. Flewelling, Michael Gaffney, Austin Heffernan, Raymond Seymour Hillier, Walter Jameson, Robert Caldwell Little, John Roddick Martin, Richard Irwin McConnell, Kenneth J. Pryor, William Leslie McFarlane, Samuel Park, Edward Pierce Povey, Thomas Roach, Alan Grilchis Samuel, Ross Leroy Samuel, Frederick Joseph Schmidt, Leo V. Schmidt, R. Ray J. Schmidt, Clarence A. Shaw, Thomas Whitney Troughton, and Mervyn Hugh Waters.
Drayton.
The honor roll for Drayton and Marlborough Peel Townships, now known as Mapleton. First World War, Carl M. Benenson, L. Alfred Bickmore, John W. Birch, Joseph J. Cowan, Lawrence L. Davidson, O. Harvey, Alfred Henry, Merle Henry, H. Lloyd Hughes, R. Kennedy, John W. McDowell, Leon C. McLeod, W. Riley, Harry L. Richards, T. I. Earl Riddles, and Arthur W. White. William H. Burley, Henry C. Clark, George Craig, George Dixon, Norman Goodwin, Alfred B. Dines, William I. Groshaw, William W. R. Kennedy, Charles McCowan, Archibald Miller, Norman O. Raymond, Gord Wilson, and Thomas B. Wilson. Second World War, William Nelson Bell, Ray Orman Coquitlam, Harold Bertram Downey, Gordon Alexander Farr, Harvey Giles, I should say, Victor M. Ennanan, John Vernon Musser, Robert Bruce Reed, Howard John Rolls, Ambrose Santa, Ira Walter Shantz, Thomas L. Allen Stone, Kenneth Ward, I. Wilson, Clarence A. Shaw, and George Arthur Wright.
Laura.
Nickel Township, World War I. James Colley, Walter G. Finney, William J. Finney, Gordon Findlay, Frank Healy, Peter W. Pick, George E. Rogers, James Scotch, Alexander P. Spears, Alexander C. Whitelaw, Lloyd Young. World War II, Booth Johnson, John Patrick Keating, Lorne P. Marr, Edwin L. Oakes, George W. Reynolds, Philip C. Revel. Elora Village in Pilkington Township, World War I. Charles A. Card, Daniel O. Card, Robert G. Carter, F. Keith Clark, Richard H. Clark, Lewis Clegg, William H. Cuthbert, Garfield Cutting, Stanley Dickinson, James C. Fisher, Harry Halls, Harry Harpin, Frederick D. MacDonald, John A. MacDonald, Charles McGowan, Archibald Miller, Edward Morphy, James Moynihan, Harold J. Riley, Alfred Vincent. World War II. E. Grant Aitchison, Russell B. Bairns, Gordon C. Bricker, William H. Brown, William G. Duncan, William J. Kay, Burton Howard, Thompson H. Rennie, John R. Runnels, John G. Stafford.
Erin.
Erin District, fallen comrades, World War I. William Arthur Berry, Thomas Bird, Norman Goodwin Broughton, James David Burt, Alexander Cochran, Charles Garfield Curry, Garfield Cutting, John Duncan Gear, Walker George Gibson, Cecil Holland, Clarence Elistus Hume, Roy Hurd, William John Jackson, Ernest Frederick Jeffries, Frederick Parker King, Gordon Franklin Leslie, William Brown Leslie, Herbert McDougall, Charles Reed McLaughlin, Harold Faulkner McConnell, Archibald Roy McGill, John Alexander McKinnon, Daniel McLean, William Francis Murphy, Herbert Player, Harry Creighton Saunders, Ellis Scott, excuse me, James Spears, George Sutton, Joseph Waldock, Edwin Clement White, Frederick Willis, Elmer Weston Wright. World War II. Edward Allison Anderson, James Douglas Barber, Everett Bessie, Ralph Poston Brady, Jerry Taylor Guthrie, William Maxwell, Alan Garfield McPhee, George Andrew Malosey, Alan Earl Perryman, Douglas Philip Reed, Gordon Smith Reed, Errol Edward Wheatus, Harold Leroy Young. Post-World War II, Douglas Melville Covert. Afghanistan, William Montague Turner.
Fergus?
First World War Honor Roll, Fergus Cenotaph. Frederick Beatty, David Alexander Black, Hugh H. Black, Robert John Black, S. Stanley Black, Ernest Edward Blanchette, Russell L. Cullenridge, Russell H. Coulthart, Harry Ross Conlon, John Logan Cook, Frederick S. Dass, Ernest L. Davies, Robert Garfield Davis, James Edmonston, Ernest E. Farley, Island B. Fish, Cecil Ernest Flood, Lawrence T. Harrison, Joseph Howard, Everett B. Imrie, William Johnson, Evan Francis Kurish, Frederick S. Curvin, George B. Leach, Harry Frederick Middleton, Thomas Oliver Nesbitt, Rex Thurston Perry, William J. Ray, Luther A. Reddy, James M. Richardson, Michael Ryan, William Simpson, James Henry Steele, George Hardy Stewart, Walter E. Williams. First World War Honor Roll, West Garifraxa Township. Walter Bellamy, David Alexander Black, William John Courtney, Henry Goodall, David W. Gregson, Thompson G. Hall, John Sidney Hanna, J. W. Johnson, Ernest S. McClelland, George A. Milne, Cyrus Young. Second World War Honor Roll, Fergus. James Michael Bergen, Harold M. Bettinson, Alvin Cyril Campbell, Herbert Wilfred Cudney, John Joseph Driscoll, Glenn William Elliott, John Samuel Flannery, Seth Jack Flannery, Fred Fletcher, Alan Henderson Gawley, Ernest Gibbs, Thomas Edwin Hayward, Burton Dix Howard, Cecil John Jackson, Alexander Douglas Muir, William Leslie McFarlane, William Harry Prest, George Morrison Robertson, Elwyn Robinson, Walter Sadler, Peter Alexander Tate. Second World War Honor Roll, West Garifraxa Township. Edward B. Povey, William S. Lutet, Arnold E. Spicer, Charles R. Flewelling, Gordon A. Smeltzer. Honor Roll, Fergus, Afghanistan, Brent William Lilly.
Guelph.
First World War, Aramosa Township. Thomas L. Edwards, R. James Gamble, Henry Hampson, Gilbert Lovelock, Robert John Mutry, Wilfred Oakes, Francis Arnold Phillips, William W. Salmon, John Robert Stump, Gordon David Winston. Second World War, Aramosa Township. Alfred James Edwards, Ernest Henry Geary, Lawrence Nellis Graham, Jerry Taylor Guthrie, Wesley Passmore Harris, Thomas Edwin Hayward, John Duncan Hiltz, Gordon E. Mack, William Henry Parkinson, Donald Fraser Titt, George R. Ware, Douglas W. Wheeler, Charles H. Wilson, Guelph Township, John D. Hassan.
Harrison.
First World War, Honor Roll Clifford, Douglas Bates, John Binkley, John Egmont Detman, William Allen Hood, Thomas Lougheed, Crawford W. Newton, James F. Welton. First World War Honor Roll Minto Township, James Harold Bacon, Douglas Bates, John Lloyd Bramhill, Joseph Broughton, George C. Carter, Henry Chilton, Archibald H. Ellis, Clifford M. Harrison, Dr. David Edwin Howes, Bernard E. Kennedy, Leonard Kirk, S. Lawrence, Elgin Lee, John Carlisle Matthews, Murray Alvin Matthews, Crawford W. Newton, William J. Reeves, Milton Seiler, James Slinger, Brian Walter Small, Lloyd Victor Small, Robert James Thompson. First World War Harrison Honor Roll, James Harold Bacon, Thomas Brown, Neil H. Campbell, James G. Cleve, Gordon Coburn, James Cochran, Edward Fair, Corkle, Gerald DeWitt Eady, Roy E. G. Henry, Robert A. Hood, Thomas P. Johnson, Robert D. Jordan, Raymond Keeland, Irwin A. Kett, John Trewitt Kidd, Frank Scott Neal, William Padfield, Raymond Pritchard, Hugh M. Smith, Thomas N. Sutherland, George Elmer Wayne, Thomas L. Wilson, Frederick Ziegler. Second World War Honor Roll Harrison, Robert Armstrong, Harold Stewart Butler, Samuel Wallace Craigmill, Russell L. Hall, Kenneth J. Pryor, Donald William Schmidt, Edward Charles Tomlin. Second World War Honor Roll Minto Township, James L. Bell, Milton Evers, John N. Gordon, Harold Gilkinson, John A. Mock, William G. Wallace, Victor V. Inanen, Arnold Stinson.
Mount Forest.
First World War Honor Roll Mount Forest, Charles Robin Adair, Martin Calvin Baker, Harold W. Bright, Alexander Brown, Peter Brown, Frederick W. Campbell, Nelson Campbell, Alice Ann Olive Cook, John Cushney, Charles Dogney, James J. Doyle, Donald T. Edwards, J. William Fox, William H. Glanfield, John G. H. Hyde, George S. Hunt, Charles A. Hunter, Robert S. Martin, Ernest McCowan, Robert Allen Morris, Ira Cooper Morrison, James Thomas Nesmith, Walter N. Pass, Louis Besodu, James Robbie, Patrick Francis Scholes, Michael F. Shannon, Willis Smith, Douglas M. Smith, Howard Smith, James R. Webster, Earl Austin White, Charles A. Wilson. Second World War Honor Roll Mount Forest, Thomas Stafford Bracey, Jack Campbell, Robert John Campbell, William Arthur Corley, Jerome A. Epoch, Ross E. Gardner, Donald N. Keith, Irwin Archibald Lytle, John MacDonald, Hugh Charles McEachran, Orby McIntosh, Stephen Thomas McNeil, Vincent Leo McNeil, Leslie Raymond Neal, Austin Michael O'Donnell, Paul Vincent O'Donnell, John Walker Patrick, Edward James Patterson, J.W. Pratt, Leo Francis Pringlemeyer, Robert E. Ross, George Hebert Spears, Lauren Chalmers Small, and John Scudamore.
Pamerson.
First World War Honor Roll, Palmerston. Ernest E. Alder, Charles J. Bailey, O. Blanchfield, John Lloyd Bramhill, William O. Bridge, Frederick J. Britton, Joseph Broughton, Charles S. Buck, Almer Deaton, John V. Desmond, J. D. Embury, Thomas A. Essery, George Everson, Joseph C. Hunt, H. Lorgan, Walter Ernest Lovett, Robert J. Marion, Graham Matthews, Daniel Milton McCovering, George E. Merrick, Albert H. Meyer, Horace Parker, Oliver L. Pender, William G. Reeve, Milton Seiler, Alex D. V. Skelton, Charles S. C. Southgate, Walter J. Totten, and Hugh D. Wilford. Second World War and Korea, Thomas Borden, Ashford Herbert Burrow, John Austin Gallagher, John Burns Mallet, Stanley Verdun Weiss, William Thomas McMillan Jr., Robert J. Wilson, Wilford Lawrence Wolfe, and George Earl Robinson.
Honor Roll, Pushlinch Township, First World War. William A. Ames, Alfred Howitt Calvert, James Donald Clark, Alfred Crowhurst, Leslie Fenton Eagle, Frederick G. Foley, Orman T. Gibbs, William Gramshaw, Septimus Harrison, Adam A. Heller, Albert Edwin Herbert, John Thomas Herbert, A. McLean, John Alexander Martin, James Henry McIntyre, William G. Morris, Louis William Munch, John W. Monroe, William Palmer, Walter Penrice, Roy A. M. Smith. Honor Roll, Pushlinch Township, Second World War. Patrick Francis W. J. McGarr, David Lorne Priest, Norman Frederick Fitton, Fraser Charles Weatherall, Gerald S. McEachran, George Alexander Stewart, William Alexander McLean. Thus concludes the honor roll. We will remember them.
Color party, Hatan Hut. Color party, Barry Colors. Please stand if you can. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. I would just like to say, before we close, on behalf of the museum, thank you so much, everyone, legions, general public, anyone, members of county staff, anybody who's here. Please, thank you so much for coming today. It is vitally important that we do this act of remembrance every single year, and I think it's especially poignant this year with the battlefields of Europe seeming to awake again, some of the demons of the 20th century feeling closer than ever, to remember the sacrifice that is represented by the names that were read, by the names that were on the lawn, to remember the world that they built with this sacrifice and how we can preserve it ourselves today. I would like to welcome everyone to join us in the museum. Afterwards, we do have coffee and drinks available in the Nicholas Keith room and some snacks if anyone would like to join us in there. And I would like to ask that you just sort of go home and break down, like, it can feel overwhelming. The names on the lawn, over 500 names, you could read the history books, it can seem overwhelming, the enormity of the sacrifice represented. But if you break it down into small little doses, if you can visit our website for the Wellington Remembers database, if you find one soldier, one name on the list that means something to you and really remember their sacrifice, it can make a big difference. So I would just ask everybody if you could do that for us, please. At this point, we would like to close, and we will close with the singing of God Save the King.
God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King. Send us victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King. Sir, turn the march off the colors. Color party. Right turn. By the left with heart. Left rail.
One more time, thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.